Hello, this is Michael from League of Items, and today I have a video for you that's going to try to figure out what some of the 8.4 changes did to items. So we're going to look at morellonomicon from 8.3 to 8.4, Liandry's from 8.3 to 8.4. We're going to compare some items, and I have a bunch of questions that I want to go over. So before we get started, I'm going to take a look at the questions I'm going to explore in this video. So if you want to follow along and try to answer these questions, or maybe predict what the answers are going to be, take a second now, pause the video, screenshot the questions that I have, and then try to answer them for yourself before I get into everything. Because some of the answers are probably going to surprise us. I haven't done all of the research yet, so this is going to be a learning experience for me while I'm recording it. So here are the questions. Which component piece is better, Oblivion Orb or Haunting Guise? Which finished item is better, Morellonomicon or Liandry's? Is Madness worth more than 15 Magic Pen minus 10 AP? And I'll explain that question a little more as we get into the video. Would you rather have 15 Magic Pen or 10 AP and Madness? Is Madness worth over 250 gold? Are Morellonomicon and Liandry's Torment first items? Then we're going to compare Morello's from 8.3, when it was the best mana item, to the new mana items. Compare each of the mana items with Liandry's as a two-piece build. What is the perceived value of CDR? That's an interesting one I want to get into. What is the gold value of CDR, which we already know? And what is the real value of CDR, which is something we're going to have to hypothesize. So let's get into it. 8.3 Morellonomicon versus 8.4. Let's take a look at some of the stats. These are easy comparisons. 2,900 gold versus 2,000 gold. How much do you want to spend for an item? Personally, I'd rather spend less money. So 2,900, I like 2,900 more. In terms of efficiency, 8.3 Morellonomicon was 114% efficient compared to the 100% efficiency from the new Morellos. Then we have 100 AP versus 80 AP. Obviously, 100 AP is better. And then we have the grievous wounds as a direct comparison, which you only procced under 35% compared to the new one, which is every time you apply magic damage. And obviously, the new one is better. So far we have 3 green checks for 8.3 and 1 for 8.4. So when we're comparing these two items, what we're really comparing is this right here. These are the ones that we have to kind of take some liberties and try to figure out for ourselves. Like, would you rather have 400 mana, 20% CDR, and 20% max mana when you get a takedown, or would you rather have 300 health and 15 magic pen? Personally, my gut instinct is I'd rather have the 400 mana, 20% CDR, and the mana return on a takedown. I know that in some situations, the 300 health is going to be more valuable, but I think that I don't know how to run the numbers for this, but I would assume that the 20% CDR is going to have roughly the same amount of damage added into your build as the 15 magic pen, and I would also expect it to be more, because 20% CDR lets you use abilities much more often. And if we're talking about this from a theoretical perspective, not on any one particular champion, I think the best possible CDR user is better than the best possible magic pen user. That's an assumption. I could be completely wrong. If anybody has any numbers to say otherwise, please share them with me. I'd be really interested to see what that is. Then the next thing I did was I compared the 8.3 Haunting Guise to the 8.4 Oblivion Orb, and no surprise, they're the exact same item. I thought I knew that going into it, but I just wanted to do it just to check. Next up, we have Liandry's 8.3 to 8.4, and here's where we get a couple of our questions. So they're both 3,100 gold, they're both roughly 82% efficient, they both have 80 AP, they both have 300 health, and then here is where the change comes in. So what we are really comparing is 15 magic pen to the Madness, the new Madness passive. And Madness, let's just go look at it real quick. Madness, deal 2% increased damage for each second in combat with champions, up to a maximum of 10%. So this is going to depend really on how well you can use Madness inside of a team fight, but I'm pretty sure Madness has a higher ceiling than the Magic Pen. The Magic Pen is going to outperform Liandry's before you get into combat. So like I'm assuming the first ability that you hit is going to do more damage with Magic Pen compared to Liandry's, but after being in combat for, I would assume 2 to 3 seconds, I think that Liandry's would outvalue that. We can run a calculation later. I'm not 100% sure how to do those kinds of things, but I'm willing to try. Then we have the 2% current health per second versus 1% max health per second, and both of these are doubled if the target is impaired. And I couldn't really wrap my mind around this when I initially reviewed this item, but the 1% max health is insane. That is a gigantic buff. It is huge. That little change itself completely changes the way that the item functions, and it's so good. Like, it is so good. I don't know how to quantify it yet. If any of you know how to quantify it, please share it with me. I'm going to try to quantify it, but I might mess up. So if any of you are watching this video that are familiar with how to run these kinds of calculations, please let me know what a more accurate way to run that calculation is. Otherwise, suffer with me. Now let's compare Haunting Guise from 8.3 to 8.4. So they were both 1500 gold. I don't know what the gold efficiency was for 8.3, but now it's 87% efficient. I got that from the wiki page. Haunting Guise gained 10 ability power. Okay, so most people are going to see, oh, this item has more ability power. This item is better than the other one. And I think that's probably correct. This health is the same, and then we have 15 Magic Pen versus Madness. So when we can do a couple things here. We can compare the 15 Magic Pen to Madness, and as I said in this instance, I think that Madness is better after 2 or 3 seconds in combat. That's what I would assume, just like doing a rough calculation in my head. But it's even better for that. Haunting Guise, you don't have to compare 15 Magic Pen to Madness. You have to compare 15 Magic Pen to 10 AP and Madness. And I think it's obvious that Haunting Guise is now much better than the old Haunting Guise, and I think the new Haunting Guise is also much better than Oblivion Orb right now, because that's how we can use this information now. Since Haunting Guise from 8.3 and Oblivion Orb are the same exact item, we can make the easy general statement that Haunting Guise from 8.4 is better than Oblivion Orb from 8.4. Right now, I feel like that's indisputable. Some champions might use Oblivion Orb better than Haunting Guise, but the item versus the item, Haunting Guise is better than Oblivion Orb as a component piece first item. And I don't know if that makes Liandry's a viable first item in practice, because in theory, obviously, Liandry's, I think that you could rush it depending on the champion. I haven't done it, but it makes sense to me. I think less mana intensive mid laners, someone like Zyra potentially could build a Liandry's and be completely fine, or someone like Rumble in the top lane, because he doesn't need mana at all, so you can get away with rushing a Liandry's and you just have a huge power spike in the early game. And I have tried that, and I'm very happy with how Rumble feels right now. So the new equation is right down here. These are the questions that I'm considering. So let's try to answer some of these questions. Which component piece is better? Oblivion Orb or Haunting Guise? Haunting Guise, 100% better. You're going to have to do a lot of convincing to take me off of that one. Which finished item is better, morellonomicon or Liandry's? So let's compare. We have 3100 versus 3000. I would rather spend the 3000. 82% efficient versus 100% efficient. Just based off of my gut, I would say I'd like 100% efficient more. 80 AP versus 80 AP, those are the exact same. And so is the health. So we have, right now, just in the beginning, I would say Morello is a little bit better to begin. And then we have to take this into consideration. And this is where things get very interesting. Because again, we are comparing Madness to Magic Pen. And this is called Torment, so I'm just going to put that in there. Torment versus Grievous Wounds. So would you rather have, this is a new question, would you rather have Madness and Torment, or 15 Magic Pen and Grievous Wounds? And again, these are questions you need to be asking yourself. That's really what this boils down to. If someone asks you, would you rather have Liandry's Torment or morellonomicon, what they are really asking you is, would you rather have Madness and Torment or 15 Magic Pen and Grievous Wounds? And I think there are going to be a lot of scenarios where you will need to make this decision in a game as your second or third item on a lot of mid laners, because the way that it works right now is most mid laners want to rush one of the mana items just for the CDR, the mana makes it easier to lane, and we'll get into that more later. So it boils down to this: Madness and Torment versus 15 Magic Pen and Grievous Wounds. And I've already said that I think Madness is straight up better than 15 Magic Pen. So first let's consider, is Torment better than Grievous Wounds? Yes. In a pure damage sense, Torment is better than Grievous Wounds. Grievous Wounds is very situational. You need to be against a team with a ton of healing. And in those games, yes, I think Morellonomicon should be considered. But Liandry's is going to help you spike harder, and it's going to delay their potential builds, because if you're continuously dealing a ton of damage, they're going to need to build magic resistance, and you're probably forcing them off of their preferred build path, so that's also a bonus. So if I'm saying, would you rather have Madness and Torment or 15 Magic Pen and Grievous Wounds, I would say that I want Madness and Torment. Which means that I have to answer this question by saying Liandry's Torment. And I need to reiterate, I think there are certain games, if I'm playing against a Soraka, or a Dr. Mundo, or a Tryndamere, Trundle, Maokai, a lot of these games, there is a good reason to build a Morellonomicon. But do you even need to build it as your first item? Is that going to make it a better first item or second item? Or would I need to make sure that I incorporate it into my core build in one of my first 3 items? And I think essentially what Riot has done is they've taken Morellonomicon from being an easy decision to have as your first item every single game, and they've turned it into a niche item where you only pick it in some games sometimes. And it's kind of a noob trap now, because most people who are used to building Morellonomicon probably have good feelings associated with Morellonomicon and will continue to pick it even though it's been severely nerfed. I think the Grievous Wounds change makes it a great niche item, but it's still a niche item. That's just how that's just what it is. So is Madness worth more than 15 Magic Pen minus 10 AP? This is essentially this question: is Madness worth over 250 gold? Because you do 15 Magic Pen is equal to 466, and 10 ability power. 10 ability power is worth 217 gold, I think. I'm pretty sure. And then you would do 466 minus 217 is equal to 249 gold. So is Madness worth 250 gold? And again, let's remind ourselves, what is Madness? Madness, deal 2% increased damage for each second in combat with champions up to a maximum of 10%. So is that worth 250 gold? I'm going to say yes. So yes and yes. And so far, all of my opinions are in line. And I think that's just the way that you have to go about this kind of thing. You need to get all your thoughts down on paper, because it's going to lead you in the right direction. Or at least what you think the right direction is. And I can be convinced otherwise with numbers, but otherwise this is what I'm basing my thoughts off of. Would you rather have 15 Magic Pen or 10 AP and Madness? I would rather have 10 AP and Madness. And I feel like that's an easy one. You don't have to think about that you don't have to think about that very hard at all. Are Morellonomicon and Liandry's first items? Liandry's, yes. I think Liandry's could be a first item in a lot of situations, because it just provides you a gigantic power spike. And it comes down to, can your champion build Liandry's as a first item? So if you're a mana-intensive champion, no, you can't build Liandry's first. It's going to hurt too much. You're not going to have enough mana to function correctly in mid lane. So it sucks, but you can't do it. So that means in order for you to get to the Liandry's Torment power spike, you're going to need to spend a couple thousand gold first, meaning that your power spike's going to come around 6,000 gold, or probably more, probably 7,000 gold, because you'll have to finish boots, you'll have to buy a Dorn's Ring, you'll have to buy some pots or a refillable potion. So your real true power spike on that champion is going from 3,100 to 4,000, which you would be able to get with the Liandry's Torment power spike in the beginning of a game. Instead, it's going to be like 8,000. So it's going to be a 2-item spike around the 20-minute mark, which is still really strong. It doesn't take anything away from the item. It's just in-game, it's going to feel much different. And we can look at that more closely in later on. So I would say Liandry's, yes. Morellonomicon, no. And again, maybe in some games it would make sense to build a Morellonomicon as a first item. Personally, I don't know what games those are. I think Liandry's would outshine it in every instance. So whenever you do think, maybe I can use a Morellonomicon, you're probably better off buying a Liandry's Torment. Okay, so now let's compare Morello's from 8.3 to the new mana items. I think everyone should agree that before Morellonomicon was changed, it was the best first item because it made laning a lot easier. It gave you great stats. It gave you 100 AP, which is huge. And I mean, it's tough to argue with that because everyone was building it. So either all of the players were building something that they thought was not the best, or I don't know. That's the only logical explanation. So I think it's a pretty uncontroversial statement to say Morellonomicon from 8.3 was the best first item because everyone was picking it or they weren't thinking about it. So let's compare that to the new items. We have Rod of Ages, which was not changed really. We have 2,700 cost, 60 to 100 AP depending on whether or not it's fully stacked, 300 to 400 mana depending on whether or not it's fully stacked. And the unique parts about this item from the rest of the items is that Rod of Ages gives health and eternity. Eternity helps you stay in the laning phase, and the health is a couple hundred health. I think it's 500 health at max. Yeah, so it's 500 health. Then we have 8.3 Morellonomicon, give you 100 AP, 400 mana, so basically the equivalent of a fully stacked Rod of Ages. Then you also get 20% CDR, which is big, and you get the grievous wounds when you deal magic damage under 35%, and 20% of your max mana is restored when you get a champion takedown. Then we have Hextech Glp, which gives 80 ability power, 500 mana, 20% CDR, but 10% of that comes from haste, so it doesn't stack with the other mana items. And you also get Frostbolt, which is like it shoots frostbolts and it slows enemy champions and it deals damage, which was slightly changed. Then we have Archangel Staff for 3,200 gold, 50 ability power, which was nerfed from 80 because they knew how good the item was, 650 mana, 20% CDR with 10 from haste. You get the opportunity to upgrade it into Seraphs, which would make it the best mana item, and you also get Awe, which is very good. Last, you have Luden's Echo, which is the most expensive of the mana items, 3,300 gold, 90 ability power, 500 mana, 20% CDR, 10 from haste, with the Echo passive. So I think that obviously we can see Morellonomicon gives you more AP than all of these items besides a fully stacked Rod of Ages. It gives less mana, but you also do not get the restore on takedowns and stuff like that. So I think Morellonomicon was still the best. The build path was nice. You could build it out of a Lost Chapter when it cost 900 gold, so that was a little bit better in terms of build path. You could go Fiendish Codex if you wanted the 10% CDR faster. Just overall, really good item. And I really think that the transition from the way that Morellonomicon was to the new mana items, I think overall it was a nerf to mid laners. So if you were a champion that already built Rod of Ages, like going Catalyst into a Rod of Ages, I think you have a similar set of power for yourself, and you're also better in comparison to other mid laners now that have to build these other items, Hextech, Archangel Staff, or Luden's Echo, because you did not have to change your build at all, and it's the same. In terms of build path, now everybody needs to have a 1,100 gold Lost Chapter or a Tear of the Goddess, basically as their first item. Compared to a Catalyst, I think that Lost Chapter is still probably better than Catalyst, just straight up. I think that's pretty basic. So I think if we're comparing items to items, personally, I still think Archangel Staff is the best compared to the other items. Builds out a Tear of the Goddess or Lost Chapter Hextech Revolver. No one really goes Hextech Revolver first because if you're building one of these items, you probably need some help with mana in the laning phase. Then we have Lost Chapter, Amplifying Tome, Blasting Wand. So a lot of the time you're looking for ways to build this Lost Chapter. Best case scenario is you get a kill or two and you can just buy the Luden's Echo immediately. So back to the spreadsheet. I would say that in my opinion, if I were comparing these items based on upside, what is the best possible scenario? I would say Archangel Staff comes in first. If you've seen any of my other videos about the AP items, you know how highly I regard Seraph's Embrace. It's ridiculously good. It's ridiculously gold efficient. Actually, we should throw that in here too. This was 114%. Rod of Ages, when fully stacked, is 150%. Very good. Hextech, you need the active to come back, so I'm going to say it's over 100%. Archangel Staff, best case scenario is a upgraded Seraph's Embrace. So let's get in there. Whoop. 140 and further increased by every 100 mana obtained from other sources. But like I've said in the past, the true value of this item can get up to like 6,000 gold, so you're really in the 180% range. But for this, I'm just going to put over 150. And then with Luden's Echo, it's 97% without its Echo passive, so let's just be generous and say it's over 100%, because Echo is most likely going to bring the gold evaluation over that. So from these numbers, this is generally what I build off of. When I'm comparing items to each other, I want the ceiling. I want the ceiling of the item. I don't care what the worst case scenario is for the item, because when you're theory crafting, it should be about what is the best possible situation that I could play around. It's Archangel Staff. So if I was ranking these, I would say Archangel Staff is the best, Rod of Ages, Morellonomicon, and then Luden's and Hextech. I think that's just the way that it is. I mean, even in the last patch, I think this was true for the most part. But I think players perceive CDR to be so much more valuable than the gold evaluation says. So we're gonna get into that later. But I truly believe that Archangel Staff was the best item, even in the last patch. I think Rod of Ages was a little bit better than Morellonomicon, but a lot of players just wanted that 20% CDR because of the way that champion kits work and the way that it feels. Like I get into arguments about this a lot with players when I'm doing gold evaluation, because they always say, oh, well, you know, it feels better. Like, you can't always trust the numbers. And I think it's true. It is true, because there are flaws with the way that we calculate gold efficiency and everything, but it also comes down to playstyle. Players already have a playstyle, and they don't want to change that for an item, but that's the optimal way to play. If the numbers are telling you something, you need to at least try it. And there's so much resistance to trying these new things just because it's going to require them to play differently. And I think that's a mistake. I really think that's a mistake. So we just compared Morello's to the new mana items, and it's better than 2 of them, but it's worse than Archangel Staff still. Overall, this is going to force a lot of champions to have worst first items and worst core builds overall. Because think about the number of champions who are building Morellonomicon first. Unless they made the transition to Archangel Staff, they are at a loss. They have a worst case scenario now. And I think that players do like having an active, so some of them will choose Hextech GLP. The slow is nice, I'm not debating that. And you get the more ability power earlier on, but at the same time, all will compensate for that a lot of the time. I'll need to run the numbers on that in a separate video and really dive down to how fast Archangel Staff is better. But I think in a majority of your games, unless it's decided by the 15-minute mark or 20-minute mark, which means that almost every single one of your lanes lost, you got stomped in lane or something like that, Archangel Staff is going to become better at some point in your game, and it can win you a game. So that's finished. Archangel's best. Compare each of the new mana items with Liandry's. So why would we do this? So when you're comparing the potential core builds of players, I really think Liandry's is just an incredible item now. It's so good. You don't get the 15 magic pen, which kind of feels bad, but Madness is worth so much more than 15 magic pen, because you're amplifying your damage, and it's more important to do a lot of damage to the carries and maybe a squishy support. Maybe the enemy team doesn't even play with like several tanks because they're trying to win the early and mid game. Liandry's is going to give you a huge power spike. So if we take the cost of Liandry's gold, the cost of Liandry's, which is 3,100 gold, excuse me, we can do 3,100 plus 2,700. The new cost would be 58, 60, 61, 63, and 6,400 gold. So you need about 6,400 gold to just buy those 2 items. You also need to buy a Doran's Ring, unless you're going to start with a Mana Crystal. You also need to buy boots, most likely. You're most likely going to upgrade those boots. You're also probably going to buy a couple control wards. So I would say your 2 item spike now comes around 7,500 gold, which is close to the 20-minute mark, or maybe just before the 20-minute mark or 30-minute mark. I think 20-minute mark. Compare each mana item. So there's really nothing about any of these items that would make Liandry's better with one of them over another. But I think it is an interesting question. Is Liandry's a better first item than some of these items? And for us to consider that, we should throw this. Okay, so now if we want to reconsider the question, is Liandry's Torment a first item? Is it a viable first item? Can some champions build Liandry's Torment as a first item? I think the answer is yes, but it's in very specific situations. You're not getting CDR off of this item. So that's about 500. Where's that number? The 20% CDR is worth about 500 gold. Okay, so you're missing out on that. It's 3,100. It's right in line with the other items. The ability power is right in line with the other items. You don't get any mana. I cannot stress this enough. You don't get any mana. You don't get any CDR. So if you are the kind of player who thinks these are important stats, or you're playing a champion where these are important stats, then Liandry's is not the first item for you, unless you can play around it very well. And I haven't tested this with Mana Flow Band, Biscuit Delivery, and Timorb Tonic. I'm not sure if there are ways to cheat this. I'm not sure. I really don't know if it's justifiable. But that would be a situation where it could work, is if Mana Flow Band and Biscuit Delivery and Time Warp Tonic or the other ways to cheat mana are good enough to compensate for the lack of mana on this item, then yes, Liandry's Torment can be a first item for everyone. But it's more likely that Liandry's is best as a second item after you get one of the mana items, which is fine. So that means that Archangel Staff with Liandry's is the best 2-item build. That's what I would assume. Again, I can be convinced, but you'd have to show me reasons why. I think if you want to play around a win condition that is easily projected into a game and likely to be reached, I think you should be playing with Archangel Staff and Liandry's. Now let's look at some of our CDR questions. What is the perceived value of CDR? And I think the perceived value, if I asked you, how much do you think 20% CDR is worth? Or how much do you think 1% of CDR is worth? I'm pretty sure you would not give me the right answer, which doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means that there's a difference in opinion between the numbers and how players perceive the value of CDR. So the gold value of CDR of 20% CDR, let's just keep it with 20% CDR, is about 500 gold. The perceived value, I would say the perceived value is probably even double that. So if I told someone to guess, I think they would come around with a number about 1,000 gold. And I think that one thing that I want to do in a future video is go through some item evaluations with perceived values or manipulated values instead of the basic numbers that you can get according to the wiki pages and stuff, because the way that they calculate the value of a stat is different than how players value stats. And what is the real value of CDR? I think the real value of CDR, I've thought about this a decent amount, because whenever I run an item evaluation, I kind of see that CDR is probably more valuable than we give it credit for. I don't know the numbers behind it. I'd have to research that more. But I think the real value of CDR is over 500. I think it's somewhere between 500 and 1,000, just because of the way that it impacts game states. So I'm going to say over 500. So before we finish today, I think we should go through all these questions again just to make sure, if you want to TLDR and kind of see what we've done in this video. Which component piece is better, Oblivion Orb or Haunting Guise? Haunting Guise is better. Which finished item is better, Morellonomicon or Liandry's? Liandry's Torment is better. Would you rather have Madness and Torment or 15 Magic Pen and Grievous Wounds? I think Madness and Torment are better. Is Madness worth more than 15 Magic Pen minus 10 AP? Yes. Is Madness worth over 250 gold? Yes. Would you rather have 15 Magic Pen or 10 AP and Madness? I'd rather have 10 AP and Madness. I think those are kind of redundant, whatever. Are Morellonomicon and Liandry's Torment first items? Liandry's Torment, yes, I think it's a first item. Morellonomicon, no, I think it's a situational item. Compare Morello's 8.3 to the new mana items. Which one's the best? Archangel Staff, still the best. I'm sure some people are going to disagree with me on that because they like items doing things like shooting damage, but whatever. Compare each of the mana items with Liandry's. So now the 2-item spike is going to come around 7,500 gold. I think overall, I think that AP mid laners are worse getting to their first item and after completing their first item, because Morellonomicon going to Luden's Echo and Hextech is worse. But if you used to build Morellonomicon and now you can build Archangel Staff, I think you're a little bit better. So champions who went from Morellonomicon to Archangel Staff are better. Champions who went from Morellonomicon to Luden's or Hextech are worse after one item. But now, with Liandry's Torment being such a good item, I think as long as you build Liandry's Torment with your second item, I think AP mid laners overall are better than what they were before. What is the perceived value of CDR? What is the gold value of CDR? And what is the real value of CDR? I just went over this really quick. I think that the perceived value of CDR is probably around 1,000 gold for most players. What is the gold value of CDR? It's 500, right around 500. And what is the real value of CDR? I think that the players are right in this instance. I think that the value of CDR is more than 500 gold. And like I said, I'm not sure how to run this calculation. Maybe I'll need to do that in a future video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe.